Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of the Hardware Podcast. My name's Jackson Danner. If you're watching on YouTube, you're probably wondering why I am alongside no one. Well, Omar decided he was too busy having a baby this week. I know, so selfish. And I am traveling for work the latter half of the week, so on short notice, couldn't find anyone. So we're doing this solo today. Just kidding to Omar and Kim. I know it's going to be an awesome week for you guys, life-changing, really fun, and they're having a baby. So no, I'm kidding. It's going to be great. But we are here to talk about our players of the week from week 7, a little bit of an FCS award that we haven't covered so far on the year, and preview week 8 for you guys. So it would be remiss to not talk about the coaching carousel at least a little bit. It is in full force this week. UAB taking football more seriously, possibly, than some Power 4 schools. They had a $2.4 million buyout to fire Trent Dilfer. That's not nothing when you're having the city that you reside in buy tickets to get butts in seats. We talked about that a couple weeks ago with the city of Birmingham spending, I believe, around $200,000 to give tickets away to local residents. Arkansas did not wait for a losing record to pull the plug on the Sam Pittman experiment. His buyout, there's a clause in his contract that's not talked about enough. His buyout would have been less if he had a losing record since the time that he signed his 2021 contract extension. He has a winning record since 2021, so the higher buyout was triggered, estimated to be at right around $9.5 million, I believe. But James Franklin being out was obviously the biggest shock of them all. What a disaster the last 3 weeks have been in not so happy Valley. You know, if you ask Drew Aller to set a timer on his camera before the year started to take a snapshot of what his season would look like halfway through, him being out for the year with injury and James Franklin not being the head coach, there's no scenario where he would have included that in it. Um, the move, it shows that Penn State is maybe more serious about winning the big games, but or so we thought, because yesterday Pete Thamel reported that Matt Campbell is actually being considered for the position. Matt Campbell is the definition of not winning big games, in my opinion. No offense to Matt Campbell, but I don't understand how you spend tens of millions of dollars to fire James Franklin only to go out and get Campbell. Obviously, that's not finalized. That's not, he's just one of the candidates, but I don't know how you consider that name, in my opinion. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get blackouts instead of whiteouts if he ends up going there. But Kurt Signetti was also on the list. Matt Rule was the last name that was reported by Pete Thamel. So an interesting group of 3 for Penn State. But enough coaching news. We are a college football awards podcast at our core, and we won't stray from that just because I'm solo today. I want to talk a little bit about the Jerry Rice Award. So for those who don't know, the Jerry Rice Award was founded in 2011, and it belongs to the most outstanding freshman in the FCS. Previous winners include first overall pick Cam Ward, Triple Crown winner Cooper Kupp, Browns quarterback Shedeur Sanders, Washington Commanders running back Chase Edmonds, a current superstar, and if you ask me, maybe the future Walter Payton Award winner, Eli Gilman, the running back from Montana. I'll throw a few names of candidates for 2025 to win the award, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube if you have another name that you think that we should add to this list. So, also, unlike many awards eligible to all positions, like the Jerry Rice Award, normally this is not a quarterback award. 8 of 14 winners total have been non-quarterbacks. So all 3 names that I'm talking about, none of them are quarterbacks actually. So just a heads up. But first guy I have, one of the top freshmen this year has been Rico Bond, a wide receiver from Lindenwood. Big shoes to fill for that wide receiver room in Lindenwood after Jeff Caldwell transferred to Cincinnati, who, by the way, has 27 targets on the year and almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's not doing too bad moving up to the Big 12. But Rico has 5 touchdowns on the year and is a 2-time OVC Big South Player of the Week, freshman of the week, I believe. Another standout receiver, Evan James, a wide receiver from Furman, he has 32 receptions for 379 yards and a pair of touchdowns on the year. If you're a bit weary of taking someone from Furman on this list because of their throttling against Western Carolina last week, just know Evan James was out for the game with injury, had nothing to do with only putting up 7 points of offense. He has had a fantastic year and hopefully he gets back healthy. Finally, to round out this short list, I want to shout out Owen Sweeney, a wide receiver from VMI. Really fun receiver to watch. He has 18 receptions for 372 yards and six touchdowns on the year. Any wide receiver that wears number 20 and is this productive, you have to respect, much less when he goes to great value West Point. Just kidding. We love VMI on this pod. Hopefully Omar will appreciate that being a West Point grad. But anyways, no, Sweeney is maybe the best route runner on this list from what I've watched. Really fun to see how he attacks at the top of his routes. Really good footwork. He was very productive against Navy as well when they played in Annapolis in week 1. Moving on to our usual segment of players of the week from the previous week. My offensive player of the week from week 7. I'm going with Cameron Petaway, a running back from Bowling Green, in a 28-23 win over Toledo. He had 3 rushes for 6 yards. Omar isn't here to stop me from saying my catchphrase for running backs, though. If you can't catch, you can't play. Concerning running backs, like I said. So, 3 for 6 isn't very good in the ground game, but he has 118 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns in the game, accounting for 2 of the 3 receiving touchdowns total that Bowling Green had. It's unusual to see a running back just have such a dominant receiving performance, especially in a big rivalry win like that over Toledo, deserves to be mentioned. For my defensive player of the week, I'm going with Cam Chapa, a safety from Western Colorado. He played a huge role in the upset win over Idaho, had 8 solo tackles, another 2 assists, a tackle for loss, and an interception return for 43 yards, as well as a pass breakup in a 49-33 win over the Vandals. He was targeted 5 times for only 21 yards, so really held his ground in coverage as well on top of the interception. This was his second straight week with double-digit tackles. And second straight week also with a turnover. He had a forced fumble and recovery last week against Idaho State. He's from the great city of Aurora, Colorado. He's been doing great things for Western Colorado as a young player. He's only a sophomore, so we wish him continued success so far this year. Lastly, my HBCU player of the week, going with Jacobian Morgan, the quarterback for Jackson State. Last week, my HBCU player of the week was his wide receiver, Shamar Savage, who also had a touchdown in this game, too. But this week, his quarterback, Jacobian, had a ridiculous 5 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, and 191 yards. Man, 9 touchdowns in 2 weeks is a great way to get notice, especially against 2 quality HBCU opponents in Alabama A&M and Bama State. Jackson State has a well-deserved bye week this week before traveling to Las Vegas to play Grambling in the Las Vegas Classic in week 9. Finally, my games of the week to watch got Georgia Tech at Duke first on the docket. Georgia Tech is off to their best start since 2011, although for Yellow Jacket fans, I imagine it probably feels like it's been much longer than that. At a glance, you might forget that 4-2 Duke is actually undefeated in ACC play, both losses coming in non-con play against Tulane and Illinois. Both offenses are really going to be fun to watch. You've got Duke's high-flying offense, as you would expect with an $8 million quarterback in Darian Mensah, but 467 yards a game total is just a lot for any defense to handle. And then Georgia Tech has not only the 11th best rushing offense in the nation, they have the 10th best completion percentage, which is just a formula to chew clock and keep Darian Mensah off the field if that ends up being Brent Keith's strategy to try and get a bit of what I would consider a bit of an upset, even though Georgia Tech is undefeated and Duke is not. Between quarterback Haynes King and running backs Jamal Hines and Malachi Hasley, their rushing attack is really what's thought of on offense for Georgia Tech. But Malik Rutherford is a fifth-year slot receiver with sneaky good athleticism. 70% of his yards have come after the catch, which is somehow even better than last year. Duke's defense on paper looks pedestrian, but when you look not just at the season totals, but the game over game, in reality, it's really because of the inconsistent showings they've had with a large delta between the really good and the really bad. Highlight of this defense, though, for Duke has been Vincent Anthony Jr. So far in the year, he has 17 pressures and 7 sacks on 136 pass rush snaps, which is really impressive stuff on only 136 reps. He will also sometimes drop back into coverage. He has 0 targets on 17 coverage snaps, which for a big man in 6'6", 260, that's pretty good. Usually you see one of those big guys drop back in coverage. That's going to be the first place you look if it's man to man, but not with Vincent Anthony Jr. My second game of the week, going with Utah versus BYU. In my opinion, college game day at the Holy War would have been fantastic. I know we have a top 10 matchup in Ole Miss, Georgia, but come on, give the Holy War some love. It's been a while since we've had it consistently. But anyways, pivotal game in the Big 12 race. After Jake Retzloff's dismissal at BYU, I don't think anyone thought that BYU would be 6-0 and 15th in the country. I don't even know if they thought that, to be honest. But this is their biggest test so far. It helps that you don't have to go to Rice-Eccles Stadium to play this thing. It is at BYU. But Utah is a legitimate offensive juggernaut that we've talked about last week, has won by no less than 25 points in every game except for their loss to number 7 in the country, Texas Tech. Now, the key to this game, in my opinion, is going to be BYU's defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. FCS followers of us will remember him as the longtime coach at Weber State, where he won 4 straight Big Sky Conference titles. But before that, he was a graduate at the University of Utah and an assistant for them from 2005 to 2013. As for his success this year at BYU, they have the eighth best total defense, giving up just short of 240 yards a game. Now, they had an uncharacteristically bad game against Arizona, possibly peeping ahead on the schedule to this week. Either way, they escaped with a win in double overtime. We'll see if some of the guys deeper in the depth chart for BYU, like Falatu Satuala and Sial Aser, can step up again. Those two guys had a combined 27 tackles last week against Arizona. Finally, my last game of the week, I've got UT Rio Grande Valley at Lamar for an FCS matchup between two 5-1 teams. Lamar is undefeated in conference play. Excuse me. University of Texas Rio Grande Valley is a newly minted team that's 5-1 overall and 1-1 in conference play. Now, this is their first full year of football since 1950 as a university, and they're competing already to win the Southland Conference. Now, Lamar is definitely considered the favorite in this game. They're ranked 18th in the nation, moving up 6 spots from last week. Lamar's defense is what's really impressive about them. Ronnie Hamrick II has 7.5 tackles for loss and 2 forced fumbles on the year. Lamar has 12 players with at least 1.5 TFLs. So lots of depth on that team that can get in the backfield, and they already have a signature win against South Dakota. So with Omar not here to banter with us and go off on rabbit trails, this has been very short. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope this gets you a little bit of a primer for your week 8 college football weekend. So enjoy. And we look forward to having hopefully a guest host next week on the podcast. So much appreciated. Take care, guys. Enjoy your college football weekend. Bye bye.